The revolutionary power of intentional living, how choosing on purpose changes everything. Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? Like you're following a script written by society, family expectations, or the relentless demands of a world that never seems to slow down? I recently had the profound privilege of interviewing Nicole Harris on the Soft Girl Era podcast, and what she shared transformed my understanding of what it truly means to live with intention. Nicole is nothing short of a modern day oracle, a wisdom keeper whose insights on intentional living have created ripples of transformation across communities of Black women professionals. Her approach to vulnerability as strategy rather than weakness has literally changed lives, offering a revolutionary framework for those ready to reclaim their power. Nicole stands as a beacon in a world that constantly pushes us toward exhaustion, showing us that there is another way, a way of living that honors our deepest values and protects our most precious resource, ourselves. What struck me most about our conversation wasn't just the depth of Nicole's insights, but how they resonated with a truth many of us have felt but couldn't articulate. That intentional living isn't just a nice idea, it's a radical act of self love and design. Think about that for a moment. A radical act. When was the last time you made a choice purely because it aligned with what matters most to you? Not because it was expected, not because it was convenient, not because it would please someone else, but because it was genuinely, authentically yours. For many of us, especially Black women who've been conditioned to carry everyone and everything, that question hits differently. It exposed the gap between the lives we're living and the lives we're longing for. It reveals how often we've traded our deepest desires for external validation, how frequently we've silenced our own needs to meet the demands of others. Nicole shared three transformative truths that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since our conversation. Truths that have the power to revolutionize not just how we live, but who we become in the process. First, intentional living is a radical act of self love and design. It means making choices on purpose, choosing what matters to you, setting boundaries around your time and energy, and refusing to let circumstances or other people define your worth. It's about recognizing that in a world designed to consume you, protecting your energy is not selfish, it's necessary. Second, vulnerability is not weakness, it's strategic strength. When Black women openly share their stories and struggles, they create authentic connections that fuel collective resilience rather than silent suffering. Our culture has taught us that strength means never showing cracks, never admitting pain. But Nicole illuminates a powerful truth that our wounds, when shared with intention, become bridges rather than barriers. And third, you can always readjust. Life will throw curveballs. Being intentional means noticing when things don't line up with your values or goals, then having the courage to pivot again and again if needed. This isn't about perfectionism. It's about presence, about staying awake to what is and isn't working in your life. These aren't just nice ideas, they're lifelines for those of us who've been drowning in expectations, perfectionism, and the exhaustion that comes from constantly performing strength. Let me share with you the story of Jenica, a rising leader in a Black professional community who struggled under the crushing weight of perfectionism. Nicole shared her journey during our interview, and it perfectly illustrates the power of intentional boundary setting. Jenica was the one everyone counted on, the one who carried teams, solved problems, and made things happen, all while hiding her own vulnerabilities because she feared being judged. She was living the strong Black woman narrative that so many of us know intimately, the one that tells us our value lies in how much we can endure, how much we can carry, how little we need. But beneath that carefully constructed exterior, Jenica was burning out. The constant performance of strength had left her isolated, disconnected from herself and others. She was succeeding by every external measure while failing at the things that mattered most to her soul. The turning point came when Jenica made a radical choice to embrace vulnerability as part of her leadership style. After appearing on the Soft Girl Era podcast, she began mentoring others and using their painful experiences as fuel for success. She stopped hiding her struggles and started sharing them, not as weaknesses to be overcome, but as sources of wisdom and connection. The result? Her openness inspired colleagues to build intentional tribes rooted in mutual support instead of silent suffering. She created ripples across Black professional spaces by shifting perspectives around trauma resilience and helped redefine powerful leadership through what Nicole brilliantly calls softness as strategy. This is what intentional living looks like in action. It's not about having all the answers or never making mistakes. It's about choosing alignment over approval, authenticity over performance, and connection over isolation. Nicole also shared the powerful journey of Janica Hughes Slaughter, whose story exemplifies transforming trauma into authentic leadership within the Black entrepreneurial space. Like many Black women, Janica was expected to embody the strong Black woman archetype, supporting family and community without showing fatigue or struggle. The weight of those expectations was suffocating, cutting her off from the very connection she longed for. But Janica made a choice that changed everything. She embraced what she calls perfect imperfection, sharing her scars publicly as sources of wisdom rather than shame. After years under impossible standards that denied her humanity for connection's sake, she chose transparency over silence. The impact was profound. She inspired others by demonstrating that wounds aren't obstacles, but fertile ground for growth. She created safe spaces where vulnerability leads to connection instead of isolation. She became a model for alchemizing pain into power, not just surviving, but thriving through authenticity. This is what Nicole means when she says vulnerability is strategic strength. It's not about exposing yourself for the sake of exposure. It's about recognizing that our shared humanity, our struggles, our fears, our imperfections is the bridge that connects us to one another. And then there's Tiesha Redman, whose story Nicole shared as a powerful example of intentional boundary setting around time and presence. Tiesha navigated urgency culture where quick decisions were valued over thoughtful ones, a particular stressor for ambitious Black women leaders. The constant pressure to respond immediately, to always be available, was draining her energy and diminishing her impact. Her solution? She adopted what she calls the power of pause, reclaiming control over when and how she responded both professionally and personally. She found liberation in honoring her own pace and fostered deeper connections by responding intentionally rather than reactively. After years of feeling rushed toward exhaustion, Tiesha recognized that slowing down was itself revolutionary. She modeled practical strategies challenging urgency culture across organizations focused on wellness and self care among marginalized groups. Her impact helped shift workplace cultures toward valuing mindful presence over constant hustle, a key part in building sustainable success networks. This is what Nicole means when she says we can always readjust. It's about recognizing when something isn't working, when it's draining rather than sustaining us, and having the courage to change course, even when that means challenging cultural norms or expectations. These stories illuminate a truth that Nicole articulated so beautifully in our interview. Intentional living isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's something we choose again and again, day after day, moment after moment. And it begins with a simple but profound question: what matters most to me right now? Not what should matter, not what matters to everyone else, not what mattered yesterday or what might matter tomorrow. but what matters to you in this moment, in this season of your life. When we anchor our choices in that clarity, everything changes. We stop living by default and start living by design. We stop reacting to life and start creating it. So today, I challenge you to take one concrete step toward intentional living. Write down what matters most to you right now. Set one new boundary that protects it, and give yourself permission not just to notice misalignments, but also courageously readjust without apology. This challenge may seem simple, but don't be deceived. It requires pushing against the current of a culture that values productivity over presence, achievement over alignment, and strength over softness. For Black women, especially, who've been conditioned to carry the weight of the world without complaint, choosing intentionality can feel like a radical act of rebellion. But here's the truth that Nicole's wisdom reveals: every time you choose alignment over approval, authenticity over performance, and connection over isolation, you're not just changing your own life, you're creating ripples that change the lives of everyone around you. You become like Jenica, whose vulnerability transformed her professional community, like Yannicka, whose perfect imperfection created space for others to embrace their own, like Tehesha, whose power of pause challenged the culture of urgency that keeps so many of us exhausted and disconnected. The world doesn't need more people living lives of quiet desperation, drowning in expectations while thirsting for meaning. The world needs people who are fully alive, deeply present, and intentionally engaged, people who have the courage to design lives that reflect what matters most to them. So I ask you, what would your life look like if you lived it on purpose? If every choice, every boundary, every yes and every no was aligned with your deepest values? What would change? What would stay the same? The answer to that question and the courage to live it might just be the most revolutionary act you ever undertake. And it starts right now with a single choice to live not by accident, but by design. The world is waiting for you to show up, not as who you think you should be, but as who you truly are. It's time to stop performing strength and start embodying it through the radical act of living intentionally. Your life is calling. How will you answer?